Hey guys, what's up? It is week 437. Let's jump right into the reviews for you. First one up is from Rusted Blade Films. This is a company based out of Italy, and this is The Killer Must Kill Again. This is the I guess, commercial film debut of Luigi Cozzi, made in 1973, not released until 1975. Now, Luigi Cozzi is kind of he's an Italian horror sci-fi genre director. I think most people probably know him from Contamination, which came out in 1980. It's like a sci-fi kind of spy gore movie. It's kind of fun. But he also did one of the kind of Italian Hercules films, and he had his hand in, he did Paganini Horror, which is a ridiculous movie with Donald Pleasance, one of the kind of off demon sequels. But he worked a lot with Dario Argento, helping on scripts and things like that, and he runs his actual kind of like gift store museum kind of thing in Italy. So Luigi Cozzi is just a name in the Italian horror world that's been known for a very long time. Rusted Blade Films also put out Nothing Underneath in an anniversary edition, and they put out a shorts compilation. I believe they do a lot more music-oriented stuff, which I haven't really kind of dived into. I've only seen their kind of anthology horror film, kind of their horror fest thing. So, The Killer Must Kill Again. I was kind of excited to check this one out, as I had seen this before. I watched the old Mondo Macabro DVD some years back, and it's a pretty solid one. It has, of course, George Hilton in it, who is Giallo royalty. He's in all the Sergio Martino Giallos and My Dear Killer. Just a really solid, great face in the Giallo films. Christina Galbo is in here from Let Sleeping Corpses Lie, Spanish actress. And Antoine St. John from The Beyond. He plays, of course, Shrek. I always mispronounce his name. The kind of crazy painter who comes back from The Beyond as the kind of monster in the film. So it's got a nice little genre cast in here. So this one is not your traditional kind of Giallo. It has the of course, the inheritance kind of stuff here, that kind of like, kill your loved one, spouse, get the money kind of deal. So George Hilton is, a constant cheater. He cheats on his wife. He's not a great guy, obviously, and his wife just doesn't want to give him any more money. He's in debt up to his eyeballs, so he decides, he ends up one late night seeing and St. John get rid of a body. So he's like, I'll blackmail this killer to kill my wife, pay him some extra, and when I get the ransom, therefore, from her father, and keep a lot of it, and then pay off all sorts of like that kind of scheme like that. But unfortunate for after the killer and George Hilton, somebody steals the killer's car while he's committing the murder. He goes to get rid of the body. He's already gotten rid of the body. It's in the trunk, and a young couple, and Christina Galbo and another, I can't think of the actor's name, kind of steal this car to go joyriding. And that leads this kind of whole thing back to here. There's a kidnapping case, and we cut back a lot between the killer trying to find the kids, and George Hilton getting kind of interviewed by a police inspector, who's another kind of solid and, kind of a recognizable face in these Italian genre films. So that's pretty much the plot of the film. There's a couple noticeable, budgetary constraints that you could tell. There's a weird scene where they're going through kind of the, I guess you'd say, like the stop meter or whatever, the freeway kind of turnpike kind of style thing for Italy, and they zoom in and you can just hear the overdubbing of something, like they couldn't get coverage, and they do this overdubbing. It's kind of exposition to pad in. It's really kind of hammy and crummy, but I understand why it's done, and that's kind of a little glaring, kind of just sloppy thing there. But besides that, it's a pretty solid film. And one thing that they do really well, and kind of a disturbing fashion, is there is a sex scene, and it's intercut with a real brutal kind of rape scene. And they intercut it purposely to do so, to kind of bother the audience, and they're pretty effective in that. So overall, I think The Killer Must Kill Again is a pretty good Giallo, and it's kind of cool that they've had it, have a release for it. I'll get to the special features before I talk about the actual transfer on the film and everything like that. So the special features include an interview with Luigi Cozzi, which is over 30 minutes. That's interesting. He talks about getting the funding for the film, how he got started working with Dario, how he got this film going, how Dario suggested, well, let my friend Luigi direct this one. He'll do a great job. All those kind of things like that. And then we also have kind of appreciation with Federico, pardon me for this name here, Frusciante, and he talks about the movie, gives a lot of deep love, talks about why he enjoys it, and it's really cool that it's coming back out. And then we have tour locations by Giallo Italiano, which is about 7 minutes. That's pretty cool as well. Now, I'm going to actually show some clips from the transfer here to kind of get everything across, because I can tell you what I feel about it or whatnot, but when I show you, I think that people will understand what I'm talking about. Sometimes the Blu-ray transfer world, We dealt with this a lot during the DVD world, where we'd have some really poor transfers, just VHS thrown on a DVD. But what we're dealing with now is kind of a weird time here, where there's probably a lot of films that elements are lost, or they're damaged, or they're not in great condition, and we'll just get a basic kind of upscale. And I know Full Moon was kind of using AI kind of in doing that, and I heard at one point somebody said that a couple of the Massacre titles, I don't know if that's true or not, the German gore stuff, had used some upscaling stuff, AI upscaling. I don't know if that's 100% true, but I've seen some, AI upscale on certain films and everything like that. I think that the Dark Knight of the Scarecrow 4K looked a lot like this kind of did, with a really waxy kind of over, basically super cleaned out to where it looks completely bizarre. To me, some of the Full Moon movies also had it. It makes sense for stuff like Arcade because the elements are lost. It was shot in a weird kind of digital way anyways in the special effects, so it'd be really hard to find those elements. And I think they even use some, and I might be wrong here, in a couple scenes in Crash and Burn, it seemed to have that kind of AI touch to it. To me, it's very ugly. It does not look good. It looks horrible. It's very glaring and noticeable to me, and it's more prevalent in Facebook videos and shorts and things like that. So I think people are getting adjusted to it, but to me, it still looks damn ugly. And I think that film looks fantastic, especially when it's remastered correctly. I think it looks great. So I think that this is probably an AI upscale. I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but regardless, they used a lot of AI to smooth out things, and it's very waxy. A lot of the scenes are very dark, and I would say it's AI in the background most certainly, because I couldn't tell if the coastal landscape at a certain point was actually supposed to be, just a tower or a crane, because it's moving like this and shaking in the background. This, honestly, not to be, hyperbolic or anything like that, this is one of the worst transfers I've ever seen. And I don't know what the issues are, if there just isn't any elements or anything like that, but I think that a little explanation of why the transfer looks like this would have been much appreciated. I still enjoy the film. I like the special features on the film, but as far as the transfer itself, not trying to be rude, not trying to shoot down a company that doesn't have that many releases yet or anything like that when it comes to Blu-ray and DVD, but I just have to be genuinely honest, it is a poor transfer, and I do not understand when you're looking comparative to stuff like Severin, and they're not Severin or anything, or Arrow, or Vinegar Syndrome, or even some of the lesser ones like something that Code Red would do. It's just not on snuff with any of that stuff. It's bizarre, and it's hard on the eyes, and if this is the way that we're going to start moving towards remasters of films, then I don't know what the point is. But that is The Killer Must Kill again. Good movie, good special features, very poor transfer. I'll let you guys decide what you guys think. You guys be the judge of it, because, your eyes may not see what my eyes see, but I think it's fair to just put a couple clips in there and show you guys what the transfer looks like. So that's Killer Must Kill again. Okay, this next one here is from Arrow Video. This is the 4K of The Good, the Bad, and the Weird, from the director of I Saw the Devil and Tale of Two Sisters, both really good Korean films. I love I Saw the Devil. But I'd seen this one before. It had been a while. This has both versions on there in 4K. It has the international version and the Korean version. The international version is longer, but I do believe that they share some scenes that are not in both. So, the Korean version has stuff that the international doesn't have anything like that. So it's got a big, giant Korean cast that I think anybody will recognize these people. They pop up in all sorts of the big kind of Korean films, like one of the leads at Parasite, all sorts of things like that. But yeah, it's got a fantastic cast. It's a period piece, and this is a big love letter to kind of the Sergio Leone spaghetti westerns done in that kind of 2010, 2015 style of Korean cinema. It's not your gritty revenge story. It's a very brightly colored, almost pulpy kind of story here, as a good Western should be in a lot of ways. But we have these, of course, the title suggests the good, the bad, and the weird. They're all looking for this one item. It's a treasure map. Supposedly, this map leads to a bunch of jewels buried in kind of like the Manchuria area. And so you have all these different kind of peoples after it. You have a common thief who's absolutely insane. He has a little cap on there. He's, I guess, considered the ugly. You have the good, who's a bounty hunter, who's after a couple kind of, criminals. He has a list of them who he's after. And then we have the bad, who has a gang of guys. And he has been hired by this kind of rich, I think he's Japanese or he's possibly Korean, who's, has like ties to the Japanese soldiers. He's hired by them to find this treasure map because they know that this thing is worth a ton of money. But in the very beginning, before he can get to it and before the bounty hunter can get to him, we have our crazy ugly guy who ends up breaking on the train and stealing the treasure map, killing a couple soldiers and running away with it. But what happens here, of course, is that our villain, everybody's kind of a villain in this, is going to go after him. The bounty hunter's after him. And we also have these kind of freedom fighters that get tied into it. The Japanese soldiers get tied into it, and they're all fighting over this map. A lot of zany, goofy characters are also there. And this is one thing that it does really well, is in the style of the Sergio Leone spaghetti westerns. We have a lot of character actors, and we have a lot of characters with memorable faces in the background and memorable scenes. I mean, think about it. For a few dollars more, Klaus Kinski pops in there with a fucking hunchback, so that's very memorable. And there's a million character actors in those movies. Tons of them. Aldo Sambro is in like all those spaghetti westerns. Luigi Pistelli. So there's a lot of good people in those movies, and they're very memorable. And this one also kind of falls sit with that. You have people that would become future stars in just tiny little roles, kind of actors that would go on to be in a bunch of bigger things and were in bigger things than this, all coming together. But they really do spend time, and the outfits are wild and memorable. And this is one of these ones that I love about kind of classic action films, and this is kind of in that vein too, is the goons and the characters, they have some personality to them, even if they don't speak very much. And that's a lot of westerns do that. But I think that today we've kind of gotten away from that stylized little small bit character who barely even has a line, but just his outfit, and we kind of know who they are just from that. If you think of something even like in the lines of Tombstone, there's a lot of cowboys in the background who you could tell they have lived in this world. They have a little bit more to do. Even the guy, Pony Deal, with a feather in his hat. It's a very tiny character, but you remember the guy with a little feather in his hat, and he gets shot in the last raid and stuff like that. You're like, that's a nice little touch. I feel like they're real people, and I do feel like that big time in The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. There's so many wild characters, and the action set pieces are fantastic. There's this scene where the ugly guy and the good guy are trapped in this kind of this little small village, and the bad guys are after him, and that is this big elaborate shootout on top of the roofs and everything like that. A lot of great stunts, and then the big finale is also fantastic when we're leading up when the Japanese soldiers come in and we have a machine gun go off. It's just really good stuff in there. So I mean, The Good, the Bad, and the Weird is a fantastic movie. It's a vastly entertaining movie. It was the most expensive Korean movie at the time, according to the commentary on here, which I do believe, and I'm not sure if it did that fantastically well, but I know it became kind of a very, very popular cult item and stuff for good reason. It's a great movie. As far as the features, there's a slew of them, but I will say the transfer did look really solid, really good. I've seen better transfers, but this is from an odd time from that early 2000, and I did think it looked really good. The surround sound's great. There's a lot of explosions and a lot of shots. The acting's fantastic, but here we go. There's a 2-disc set here, and we have the booklet featuring writings by Darcy Paquette, Kun Hung Kim, Cho Ja-wee, and Ariel Sud Hudson, and 3 postcard size art, double fold out poster, and then we have 4K master approved by the director and Dolby Vision, and then we have includes both international Korean versions of the film with presented via seamless branching, which I absolutely love. Screen Factory should start doing that with their 4Ks. Looking at you, Night of the Creeps, DTS HD, MA71 audio on both cuts of the films, optional English subtitles, audio commentary by film critic James Marsh and film critic producer Pierce Conrad, archival audio commentary international cut by the director and actors Sang Kang-ho, Lee Bong-ho, and Jung Woo-sung. Archival commentary by the Korean version by the director, cinematographer, lighting director, and art director. Yeah, an introduction to the film by King Jee-woon. He also mentioned some local, some another Korean film, like I can't think of the title. Breaking the Chains, is that possibly? That was a big inspiration to him as well in this film. And then we have Disc 2, Corralling Chaos in the Desert, interview with the director, Dusty Dust-Ups and Sweaty Saddles, an interview with martial arts coordinator Jung Do-hong, archival making of films, featurettes, trailer gallery, image gallery. Really nice release for a really cool movie. I would highly recommend this one. I enjoyed it. It's good stuff, and this is the second time watching it. Held up. Okay, we're going to hop into the Dai Gothic set here, and this is a lot like the first set they had. I don't remember if it was called Gothic or Ghost Stories or something along the lines, but let's jump in. We're going to do the first one here. This is from Radiance Films, of course, a great company, and we're going to do The Demon of Mount Oin. I don't know how to say that. Un, O-E, 2 syllable, like one little syllable there, then the Japanese language, and I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce there. So this is a film from 1960, and in the special features and commentary, they explain it's not necessarily a yokai, it's not necessarily a Kwaidan movie, so it's not a ghost, it's not a monster movie, it's some sort of movie kind of in the middle, and I would agree with that kind of assessment here. And at first I was a little kind of confused, and I really didn't know what this kind of movie was, and the special features really helped me out. They said at the time, late April, early May, a lot of the Japanese companies, the big 6, Toho, Toei, Shin Toho, Nakatsu, Dai, and they would kind of make these big summer blockbusters, which is what we do in the summer, and they said and the companies, all the actors are under contract, so we get all the big stars in their movies, and they have to have their parts, and they have to be written to a certain way in the script so that none of them lose their star power. So we have, of course, the kind of A star, the B star, the up-and-comer star. So it's really kind of, complicated in that aspect, and I was like, I could see exactly what they're doing with that after that context was given. It does have Razo in it, who was appeared in all the ninja films, the Shinobi movies that Radiance Films has put out as well from Dai, which are good films, enjoyable films. I think there was 8 of those or something like that. He's in the whole series. He plays kind of a young, kind of noble kind of guy here. So this one, it's kind of weird because it's the one where the villain and the hero, the kind of main kind of protagonist, antagonist, both are just men. So in the beginning of this film, we live in kind of a world where there's definitely supernatural aspects and things of that nature. And we have this guy who's a well-respected, I don't know what his position is exactly, but he has a wife that he loves very much. And one of the kind of, higher-ups decides, hey, I want his wife. I'm going to take his wife. Decides to take her and, molest her. And this upsets the guy greatly. And we learn his backstory later on, and we kind of understand why he is so outraged. And then she is sold off to another kingdom where our hero is, and whatnot, and she's completely torn about the whole situation and everything in that aspect. But what happened to our man who lost his wife, he kind of goes on the outskirts and he runs into a group of bandits, and these bandits are kind of being led by this kind of witch character who wants to get back at the kingdom and destroy them. I always say kingdom, but it's not necessarily the correct term like that, but it's the equivalent to if you watch any medieval fantasy movies or in that kind of vein, but Japanese history and stuff like that. It's a lot different than the European kind of classical history and things like that, but just simplifying it for myself when I talk about it. But so we hit here, and he is kind of confronted. They want a sword, and which they do have a little documentary about the sword too, what it is, and these kind of special weapons, which I love about Asian cinema. But he kind of goes through and says, I'm already dead, you're not getting the sword. And they realize that they have the same motives, that they want to take down this kingdom. And he has a more, altruistic kind of motive where he wants to come in and free the people, kind of be that guy that frees the people, from the tyranny. But they don't want that. They're just kind of an evil group of bandits, some of them with magical powers, special powers. One of them has the ability to turn into a giant paper mache spider. One has the ability to turn into like this giant kind of paper mache bull. So there's that kind of like supernatural kind of weird aspect about it as well. So what happens is they kind of wage war on the kingdoms. We have a lot of these big battle scenes and these other kind of characters coming in where our lead character's wife gets intertwined with this whole thing. So we do have this kind of weird, strange love triangle here where the main hero's wife, Razo's wife, gets kidnapped. I believe it's Razo is the actor's name, his first name, gets kidnapped by the villains, and she sort of forms a bond with the villain. So that creates this kind of, I wouldn't say love triangle, but emotional triangle between them all. And it kind of plays into the last showdown. But we do have some fun kind of monster action here where we have, the giant spider attacking the kingdom and the giant bull, and all that stuff is fun. And overall, it's a pretty decent movie with very big giant sets and very brightly colored kind of outfits and things like that. It's a giant epic, but give it, the first 20-30 minutes, because it's a fairly long film, an hour and 50 minutes, I think, along those lines. But give it a half an hour or so, and before you kind of settle in and know exactly who everyone is, because there's a couple characters that, at first you're like, I don't know what this character's point in this film is, and you're like, okay, I understand why they're in here now and stuff like that. I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty good. I didn't love it as much as, some of the other films that they put out, but by the end of it, I was like, I actually gained a pretty good appreciation for this one, and at first, I just wasn't connecting with it, but at the end of it, I enjoyed it. So we have a new interview with period film historian Tachi Kasuga, Blade of the Demon Slayer, a visual essay by Tom Mez. That is 4 minutes. He talks about, the kind of blade in the film, which is supposedly a real blade and everything like that. Limited edition 80-pound perfect bound booklet featuring writing by Amber T, Jasper Sharp, and Tom Mez, plus archival writing by Daniel O'Neill, and original ghost stories by F. Hanlon Davies. I'm not sure it's Davis, I would say. Yeah, but this is a good one. I would highly recommend it. As Razo Ichikawa. There we go. There we got that name there. But yeah, good stuff. Not really heard about this movie, so it's always good to discover another horror film from 1960, which is a great year. I'm being a little crazy here. I'm starting 2 box sets here, 2 kind of multiple disc sets here. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Truth or Dare legacy here. And we're going to start with the first disc. We're going to start with the first movie from 1986, Truth or Dare. Is it a Critical Madness? It's Truth or Dare, a Critical Madness from 1986. And this one is a cult movie through and through. It lives in infamy. And for good reason, too. Tim Ritter started directing movies when he was like, actual release movies, when he was like 16. So In 1986, Tim Ritter was like 17, 18 years old when he started Truth or Dare. This is his third feature film. His first feature film was Day of the Reaper, which came out in 84, and then he met Joel D. Wynkoop, and they were making these movies in Florida. They made an anthology, Twisted Illusions. One of the shorts within that anthology was Truth or Dare, starring Joel D. Wynkoop. It's a really cool short, really crazy short, and it hit it right at the time. The Truth or Dare thing was, I mean, I feel like it's always been huge, but yeah, so they make this short, they take it to some investors, and who produce stuff like 555 and stuff, so that was, I believe that's what he said is getting out there in the special features and commentaries. So they decided to go fund this movie, and it was going to be a SOV movie at first, but for some reason it kept getting bigger and bigger, and it became this $250,000 to $350,000 shot on 16 millimeter movie in Florida. They didn't really realize that Tim Ritter at the time was like 17, 18 years old, so he got right out of high school, right in the summer, and started directing this biggest movie he ever had on a budget. And Tim Ritter's still making movies to this day. He'd go on to do Killing Spree, which is also, I believe, on 16 millimeter, and a bunch of SOV stuff, including he made 4 sequels to this, but he didn't direct the 5th one. But the 2 and 3 are both SOV, Wicked Games in 94, and I don't remember when Screaming for Sanity came out, but he made those sequels. He made Creep. He made a Christian-based film as well. So Tim Ritter has been a very busy independent director, and I've always had a fondness for Tim Ritter. Years ago, I've actually did a little whole retrospective on his career, but it's been a long time since I popped in a Tim Ritter movie. So yeah, we're talking Truth or Dare. So this is a wacky movie. Okay, so I think my biggest pet peeve with this one, and it's still, I believe that they probably feel the same way, as I would have really liked to see Joel D. Wynkoop in that lead role in this film. Because Joel D. Wynkoop is an indie actor that's been doing it for years, and he has a certain amount of energy, and he is so dedicated. And if you ever met the guy, he's just a nonstop energy, great guy, and a really good indie actor. Somebody once told me, when I used to make the movies, I mean, I don't want to throw his name, but Dustin would always say, "I'd rather have people give me more, and I tell them to go back than I have to give them more. It's easier to take off." And Joel D. Wynkoop, I can tell, always gives so much, and he has a small role in this, but he's good. But he's great in the short. So I wish he was in the lead role here. But what we have is kind of a staple story element here in the Tim Ritter films. We have a guy who witnesses his wife cheating on him. He does not take it well. He kind of goes to the Tim Ritter, kind of Florida beach, and starts to get really upset about it, and then he ends up driving home, and he picks up this hitchhiker on the way there and on the way back, and they decide to go camping, and she starts to play Truth or Dare with him, and she starts to ask him to do some really horrible stuff, and he's cutting himself up. Turns out it was all hallucination. That's the short version, but this is the opening act of the film, so it's all hallucination. He ends up in a mental institution, and this is where the movie starts to get a little repetitive, a little like half-cooked, but he escapes from the mental institution, Sunnyvale, and he goes after his wife. He ends up killing her, new boyfriend and things like that. And then at the end of the film, he even escapes again. Through hallucinations, we see heads are blown up by grenades. Old man cuts himself. Great performance by that old man. Truth or Dare, you're 10, you're 10, you ain't done nothing yet. That guy's great in that. But so he escapes again and goes this giant killing spree where a couple bubbling cops and ridiculous seeds are after him and stuff like that. And there's some laughs to be had. Some intentional, of course. Some unintentional. I mean, it is what it is. But I love the scene where the old lady is yelling at him. I always thought that was great stuff. But so this movie has like a certain cheese quality about it, but it also has huge kind of things about it as well, like car explosions, lots of different weapons. And hearing the commentary, they definitely planned more. They had better effects planned out, but a lot of things fell through. And I'm sitting here thinking, man, he made this when he was 17, 18 years old, and there's so much to it, and there's so much, it's so ambitious. And I don't think a lot of people would have ever got this fucking thing done. But there's a lot of stuff going on. It's wacky and weird, and it's got its own kind of sense of charm that I think that only an individual, I guess, like Tim Ritter could make, because it's not really like anything else. I actually think, and I know a lot of people prefer the first one, but I do think that Wicked Games and Screaming for Sanity are improvements in the terms of quality filmmaking and storytelling than this one. I mean, maybe not as big on the scale of the budget or as memorable, but personally, I think they're better movies. And I think that Ritter got better in that time frame, you know what I mean? As he should, But at the same time, he had less money. But I think that even Killing Spree probably a better movie, or Creep. But I think that this one is kind of just this cult item for a good reason. I think it's fun and zany, and I think the lead performance is genuine, but just so cheesy at the same time, just because the way it is done. It's very melodramatic and everything like that. But yeah, I would recommend Truth or Dare if you're a fan of, a lot of people always call this SOV. It's not SOV. SOV. It was edited on tape. The elements are lost, so it will forever be stuck on video. Maybe fittingly so, but it is not an SOV movie. It's not shot on video. It's edited on video and stuck on video because the 16 millimeter elements are lost. There's plenty of movies that people think are SOV, but they're not. Mutilations is another one. Killing Spree is probably another one that people think it's SOV. But there's a lot that people think are SOV that were edited on tape, and the elements are lost, or they get that kind of same kind of vibe or cadence from it. But, Truth or Dare is a 1986 kind of classic. The end music is unforgettable, sung by a church choir, and it is an earworm of a song. And it kind of carried on a legacy, and the sequels would always bring in more and more characters from the the first film in different roles and things like that. Looking forward to rewatching Wicked Games and Screaming for Sanity. I did rewatch Wicked Games for 1994, but, I'm looking forward to seeing some Dan Hess action and Joel D. Wynkoop, who is one of my favorites. As far as the special features on the first movie, we have the original short, which is always a fun watch, and we have commentary on that as well, I think by Joel D. Wynkoop and his wife, Kathy Wynkoop. But then we also have commentaries on both films, and we also have an Italian, which is hilarious. Just give it a little listen if you can. But we have commentary by Tim Ritter from 2016, if I'm not mistaken, and it's not a boring commentary. A lot of commentaries have a lot of air in them. There's no air in this one. Ritter talks during the whole thing about the production, about his influences and all things like that. And then we have a new commentary with Joel D. Wynkoop and his wife on there, which is also a lot of fun. And Joel has a memory, a really good memory. It's kind of impressive all the stuff he remembers when this movie was made. 14 plus 20. He actually mentions that he just got back from Cinema Wasteland, whereas I did meet him at that Wasteland. It was really cool kind of to see that. But it is the remaster's kind of a bit iffy on it because the elements are lost. There's two versions. There's like the original tape master thing, and then I think they tried like an upscale kind of thing, what I was even talking about earlier. But the one complaint is I do not like how they put these 3 discs in here. So we have the first movie here, and then we have 2 discs on this side, which is, I feel like kind of just an accident, a problem waiting to happen. But yeah, that's Truth or Dare Legacy, first disc we watched here. Truth or Dare, A Critical Madness, 1986. A lot of fun stuff. Okay, we're going to tackle a Bollywood movie here, and this is from Onda Macabro. This was originally in that big Bollywood set, now out of print, so they're releasing them individual. We have Veerana, Vengeance of the Vampire from 1988 by the 2 of the Ramsay brothers. Ramsay. I always want to say Ramsay, but I believe it's Ramsay. I'm not 100% sure, but they're a big kind of driving force in a lot of the Bollywood horror films, and they've had their hands on almost all of them. I think almost every Bollywood horror movie I've probably seen had them involved somehow. But this one, this is it's very typical in a lot of the Bollywood style, but I think that it's a little bit more gothic. It's a lot like Black Sunday, which I give as a compliment here. So, besides that, the movie on here, there is a feature on here with an introduction where a Bollywood fan kind of expert talks about it. Even has a couple posters of the movie and says there was a movie that had a very similar name in Bollywood. It was kind of like a crappy ripoff and whatnot. He talks about this movie, and they created all these different monsters and how this pushed forth the shift in from the male monster kind of being there into predominantly being a female monster in the lead role of these movies like that. Now, Indonesian cinema in the early 80s would switch back. I'm trying to think, was it predominantly always, there was always a witch woman, but I feel like in Indonesian cinema, it kind of is back and forth, between the two. And I do think Bollywood is closest, when we're looking at Bollywood horror films, is definitely closest to Indonesia. In terms of horror films, I think that's the only comparison, although Indonesia films don't typically have the dances and things like that. So this movie is 2 hours and 20 minutes, and I'm going to have the same complaint about 90% of Bollywood movies, is it's too long. It's too long for the Western audience. We're not used to that kind of stuff here. But they treat their movies seemingly as this kind of big, giant kind of thing where we have everything in there. Action, comedy, horror. You get a little bit musical. You get a little bit everything, for your some bang for your buck, which is not what we do here. I feel like America tries to be a purist on their genres, and even stuff like Grease, they kind of mix the genres. That's all in one kind of thing, like film noir, horror, sci-fi, fantasy. It's all the same. It's all in the same genre. Those are genre films. We don't typically do that. Everything has to be broken down in the niche. We have to give everything a little label. And it can be a little, I guess, it kind of keep you in a certain place. But when we come here, I still have the problem with the musical numbers. I think it's not that I dislike them. I just feel like they are out of place, and they're more padding for me. But I understand, I guess, to a certain extent why they're there. So it's kind of a relatively simple story here. We have this family that decides to get rid of this witch who's kind of worshipped, and she kind of sleeps around and picks up men and then kind of seduces them and kind of drains their soul. He hears about this and he says, well, I'm going to put myself out there and try to kill her, and he ends up doing it. But what he doesn't know is that their disciples kind of put like some sort of doll in the casket of, like as kind of I don't know what you would call that, like a voodoo doll kind of in that style of their daughter. So the daughter becomes possessed by this witch, and it's kind of like the Black Sunday, right, story. Like, and just a little bit reminds me a lot like it, but I'm sure there's folklore in other countries that are very similar to that as well. So she starts, as she grows up, she starts to get older. Meanwhile, her father has been kind of like, I think it's her uncle or something, has been kind of like kidnapped. The whole family lineage, I'm getting confused which one's the father, which one's the uncle, and kind of deal. But he has been like kidnapped by them, and they think he's dead. What happens is, one of the minions, the kind of head minion, brings the daughter back and says, I found her. Her guardian has washed away in a flood, and he starts to live there and kind of manipulate the whole situation. Kind of very similar to something like The Omen, right, where Damien has kind of the spotter. So he's living amongst the house and whatnot, and she starts to kind of pick up the old habits of her possessed, the witch possessed her. So she goes out at night and picks up men who want to have sex with her and kills them violently, leaves them in kind of the woods and stuff like that. Some of the servants or some of the helpers around the house start to notice weird things about her and things like that. Well, the niece is coming back to town because she's visiting her uncle and things like that. And she finds kind of like a mate, but she's also bringing back her cousin. I think they're cousins or something like that. And his name is, here guys, his name is Hitchcock. That's right. And it's obviously from Hitchcock, but it's also, I think, some sort of gay joke, because at one point we realize that this character is a homosexual when he offers, hey, come in to the shower with me, to a hotel manager. I dropped the soap. So you guys can see where we have this really ridiculously silly, out of place, dated humor in these Bollywood movies. But yeah, that character is definitely probably the most memorable character, I would say, besides maybe the witch or some of the other characters. But he becomes really funny because he's obsessed with directing horror films, so he's always making these references and like doing this kind of stuff, like, oh yes, we'll do this scene here, I absolutely love it. But he's just a ridiculously goofy comic relief character that does have some, you do kind of enjoy by the end of it. But yeah, it's just a kind of a really long movie. It has like a decent ending. They do end up killing a couple of the characters. I think the witch stuff is cool. I think she looks kind of scary. I think that it has a great kind of gothic atmosphere towards the end, or crypt-like atmosphere, where there's a lot of nice bright colors and stuff, and we have kind of a big showdown. Almost turns into an action movie at the very end, very similar to an Indonesian film, where we have them kind of like sword play and fights and things like that. But overall, I think this is pretty decent. I think that it looks all right. They said some of the elements were damaged, so we're going to have that kind of stuff as well. And it is in full screen, so, but I think that's just the way the movies were shot. We have it's of course in Hindi audio, and the musical numbers aren't horrible. Love story, kind of move forward, the love relationship that the niece has with the kind of her guy that ends up saving her on the road. Directed by Tokuzō and Shyam Ramsay. Is it Ramsay or Ramsay? I want to say Ramsay so bad because, all the Egyptian movies and everything like that. But optional English subtitles, and then yeah, and we did have an opening here, introduction to by film writer Tim Paxton, original trailer newly translated, optional subtitles, region free, colorful, bright, good sets and stuff like that. This is Veerana, Vengeance of the Vampire, so it sounds like it's a VR. Check it out. Okay, guys, we're going to get into some 2025 movies here, and I feel like a stick in the mud this whole year. I don't know what it is, but I'm just not enjoying that many of the new horror films this year. This is the most times I've been in theaters in a long time. I mean, I live right down the street from a theater, so how should I not go? But we're going to talk about The Long Walk. That's right. And this, I think, is written or directed by J.T. Melander, who did Strange Darling, which I love. Strange Darling from last year. It was one of my favorites of the year. But we're going to talk about The Long Walk, which was a story by Richard Bachman. I think this is one of the first things King wrote as a college student, but didn't get released till years later. And it's, Richard Bachman is supposed to be like his dark kind of, he tried to keep it as a different pen name. He wrote The Running Man and The Rage and stuff like that. And it was kind of be his darker, more edgier side. He didn't want it to get out there. But I also think he wanted to just kind of push it forward and be like, hey, I can do this without my name attached to it and stuff like that. So we're talking about The Long Walk here. So yeah, it's a totalitarian kind of dystopian society in the future, and every year they draw the names of the kids who entered the Long Walk, which seems to be about every kid, and 50 of them are picked. The book, I hear there's some differences. I won't go into that because I've not read the short story or novella, whatever it is. I don't think it's a short story, but I think it's a actual book or novella. So the 50 kids are drawn, and they just have to walk and walk and walk. And if you walk off the pavement, if you stop and you're too slow in a certain amount of time, you're executed. Mark Hamill is kind of this. It's like he's an enforcer of it, but he also seems to be a general that drives around and things, and he seems to be like the face of this kind of army. Not necessarily if he's like a spokesperson or the actual guy in charge. It's not really known, but he's a caricature, and he says a lot of ridiculous things like "You boys better get going. You got a lot of balls." It's just like a very one-dimensional character, but at times it's funny, at times it works. So we kind of introduced to our 50 characters here. We have minimal kind of outside of the long walk scenes that kind of go to their everyday lives, mostly just for our lead character here. Now I'm going to say this, and this is one of the first things King wrote. I don't know how close it is to the source material, but it seems very Kingy, very Stephen King-like. Now I'm going to talk about it without spoiling it here, and then we'll get into some spoilers. I'll just talk about this a little bit more. But everybody seems to really love this, and I was kind of shocked when I walked out and I saw that everyone liked it. I was like, it was okay at best, honestly. And so the thing is, The Long Walk is a movie where I was watching it, and there's moments where I was like, this is really gut-wrenching and heart and like touching and emotional, and I'm being 100% invested. I'm like, this is great. And then a character would say something stupid, it would do something trite or cheap, and it became so cringeworthy. It was so, it annoyed me to the point where I was like embarrassed for the movie. Like I was like, oh my god, that's so bad, that's so poorly done, that's so poorly written, that's so on the nose. It became to the point where I was embarrassed for the movie. And I just started laughing. Like, it was like, oh, this is comically shitty now. And it would do this back and forth the entire movie. And I don't want to compare this, but I remember reading It years ago, and I felt like it had a brilliant chapter and a shitty chapter and a brilliant chapter. And that's the reason they broke up the movies that way, because the stuff with kids is great, and the rest is, it's fucking snooze fest. And I don't know if I feel that way now. If I read the book, I don't know if I feel that way about the movies, if they were told in the right proper order or whatnot, like the book. But I'm telling you, this just goes from, it's just like almost touching the stars to just becoming a comical, unintentionally funny piece of crap. Back and forth all the time. I thought the ending was really strong. I thought the ending was great. I think the actor's name is David John Hansen, or John Johnson. I'm not sure how to say his name. But he's in Alien Romulus, and he is a very good actor. And he does really good in this movie, especially with some of the crappy dialogue he has, trite, cheap dialogue. He does the best he can. He still comes across a very strong actor. Charlie Plummer is also in here from Spontaneous, and I think he does the best he can. I think that his character was a semi-interesting character. I think that he did it well, and I think there's a time when he has a mental breakdown where I was like, I believe that. I believe that. I believe that. I'm part of this, right? I was like, that's good. That's great. That's great stuff. And there's another character called Stebbins, which I thought did a great job too. And I thought his character was kind of well-rounded. And in fact, the lead guy's character, I think, is really well-written. I don't know the actor's name, but I just think he's miscast, and I didn't buy his character. I didn't buy his acting in the movie. I didn't think it was very good. And that's just me personally. People are saying he's fantastic. I think his character is well-written in comparison to the other characters. But I think he's just not very good actor. I think he might be a little miscast. And some of the characters here I just think are basically the items they carry. If that makes any sense. Like, just very, very quick characters, not much there to them. Overall, I think it has moments of brilliance, but is followed quickly by moments of crap. And I think the crap sometimes outweighs its goodwill gets lost really bad in it. And I started laughing at the movie instead, and it's not a funny film. It's a dark film. It's a messed up film, and it will bother some people too. But I'm just too jaded to be bothered by something like this, I guess, to the point where I just started laughing at it on the unintentional humor, which is not even there because I just think it was poorly done at times. Overall, I think you should see it yourself. I could just be a very bitter person when it comes to new movies, but I did like some. I liked Sinners. I liked Together. I mean, I don't know, man. I was just vastly disappointed with this, and I loved King growing up, and maybe it's just I'm just kinged out or something. I don't know, but I don't read his books anymore, and there's a time when I outgrew his books where I just felt like I just didn't want to read them anymore. And it's just I don't know if that's the case in my head or not, but I still love Stephen King's a lot of his movies, and I love what he's done for horror. But sometimes his movies just don't hold up anymore for me, to be honest. The new ones. They're not that good. I think Mike Flanagan does it really well, honestly. I thought Dr. Sleep was fantastic. So maybe it's just that I just think this movie is just not particularly good, or at the very least not made for me. Getting into spoilers. So spoiler here. The characters are basically just the items they carry. I did like the kid who was writing the book, although he's very one-dimensional. I thought that he had a good look, and I thought that his demise was great. But there's one character who has a radio at one point. He's listening to the radio, and then later he dies, and he's running off. And then like one of the characters is like, "Who's gone nuts?" He's like, "It's Tozo. He has the radio." It's like, oh my god, who wrote that shit? It's like, that's just so the audience know who he is, because they probably forgot, because he's fucking not a character. He's a radio. Like shit like that. But the ending was dark, and I thought it worked well. And spoiler here, I think the ending is kind of brilliant in an aspect how dark it is, because we have a character in Johansson who's our lead character is gonna get his final wish in the long walk, and he's gonna, because they get a wish if they win, everyone else dies, and he wants to do something a little bit, dark with his wish. And the whole entire story here, got my knee in there for some reason. The whole entire story, the whole entire walk, this character's trying to convince him not to do it. Don't do it. There's beauty in the world. There's beauty in the world. There's beauty in the world. And we kind of play a switcheroo where that character actually lives, and the character who is going to do the bad wish dies. And then, we're thinking that the guy who had the kind heart is going to do the good thing, right? But by seeing his friend die, who he somehow turned around in his head, he turned around this guy who had such a bad life, and he was going to do something good, but that guy dies. But by seeing that, now he has had everything taken from him, and he can kind of switch to that like horrible bad place. And I was just like, oh, that's so kind of twisted, to be honest, and dark, where somebody who's so full of light can change somebody who's full of darkness's mind. But that they saw that light kind of come back in that person's eyes to just watch them die anyways, made it switch back to where their light was no longer there. And I was like, that's really good. And I feel like this movie is almost close to brilliance, but it just fucks up too many times for me and it becomes laughable. See, because when something is super sincere and it's almost brilliant, when it falls from grace for you, it almost makes it even worse. If that makes any sense. I don't know. But that's how I felt, unfortunately. It's not like the worst movie. I gave it like a 5.5 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10 because there's stuff I like. Maybe I'll give it a rewatch. But it's a no for me, dog, in the words. It's just simplify it there. But yeah, that's The Long Walk. Okay, I'll be brief with this one as I don't have that much to say about it, but it is another 2025 one, and this is Marshmallow. This is the second summer camp horror movie, along with Summer of Evil this year, and this one, this one, at first I was like, okay, this isn't too bad. We open up, we have a shy kid, he's picked on by everybody, doesn't want to go to summer camp, but Corbin Burnson is grandfather in a great role. I love Corbin Burnson as, the dentist, stuff like that, and he does a really strong job, really good character, a little small role in this one, and he sees something tragic, and the kid's got to go to summer camp, and he gets there, and has a hard time making friends. There's a bully there that is absolutely unhinged and insane, and almost immediately, one chunk of the movie, he almost does something unspeakable, where I was like, what the fuck is happening in this thing? But and there's a point in the movie where I was like halfway through, I was like, this movie literally makes no sense at this point. They lost me. I don't get it. And then they redeem themselves by their twist. And even saying there's a twist probably spoils it for some people, but the twist in this movie actually is pretty cool, pretty unique, pretty fun. It's not too dissimilar to some stuff this year, and I think that's kind of where we're going at to a certain aspect. Sci-fi kind of horror twist here. But the problem with this one is I want to watch the movie that they're setting it up for, not the movie I just watched. So, but the acting's fairly decent. It gets a little sloppy, a little, I don't know what the hell's going on or where it's going, but it all does redeem itself, and it becomes a pretty decent little horror film. It's not gratuitously gory or anything like that, but the ideas are a little twisted, and it's overall fun. I think I do like Summer of Evil just a little bit more, but neither of them are like, hey, these are great recommends. But Marshmallow, it deserves some points for sure for just being at least a solid original idea, even if it takes a little too long to get there, and by the time you're there, you want to watch the movie they're kind of teasing instead of the movie you just watched. But hey. Okay, the Patreon pick here is, I feel like such a crazy person at this point, because I'm like, yeah, you don't want to watch The Long Walk, the movie everybody likes. But what you do want to watch is the Patreon pick. Mrparka's bad pick. There's got to be a bad pick every week. And this is kind of one that really threw me for a loop. But Deadpool and Wolverine, okay? So I watched the first two Deadpool movies. I enjoyed them. I liked Logan quite a bit. I didn't like, the X-Men movies when they came out. I thought they were crappy. I thought they didn't get the thing right. I thought they sucked. So when the whole Marvel World universe came out, I watched all the ones right when they first came out. Blade, Elektra, Man-Thing, the X-Men movies, the Spider-Man movies. And, Blade, Man-Thing, and fucking fucking Punisher and Daredevil, I was like, I can't watch any more of these shit bombs. These are fucking dog shit. And I was at that young age where I still had this real close connection with the comics. You know, I grew up reading Marvel comics, you know, having all the action figures, knowing all the weird side characters and things like that. So when I was watching, I was excited to see them, right? And some of them were fun, like Blade or, you know, the Spider-Man 1 and 2. But after a while, they just started becoming giant pieces of shit. The Fantastic Four movies were terrible. So I was like, I am out. I'm done. And that's right when they started to get some clout, when they came out with Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk, and people started liking them again. And I was like, I'm not watching them. I gave my time too many to them. I eventually came back down to the Avengers. I still watched the first fan. I was like, I like that. And I started watching them again to a certain extent. I got burnt out really fast, probably about the time Black Panther. And I was like, I'm out. I'm good. I watched the fucking big, you know, Thanos Infinity War movies and Black Panther, and I kind of dipped out there. I'd seen Logan here and there, which is not, that's a Fox one, but that kind of stuff here and there. And the Deadpool movies are a little different, and I like James Gunn's Suicide Squad. That's DC, I know, but the sequel to it. So I kind of realized I kind of like the one-offs. The Guardians I also like, that's a little different, but I like the one-off movies that were kind of rated R, so where they could do things and kill people and not have to have repercussions for it. When you get to that big Marvel MCU universe, you're like, we can't do that because we need this character for that. We can't sign off on that. We can't say that because this. It's just all movies by committee crap, big blob of CGI fighting at the end, fucking crap, gray shit, you know. And that's just what I became not invested in. So when eventually I watched the first two Deadpool, somebody picked Deadpool and Wolverine. I was like, okay, here we go. I'm not really gonna like this. It is what it is. In the first like 10 minutes, I was like, man, Ryan Reynolds is really, you know, I always kind of was fine with him. I didn't hate him. I liked him to a certain extent. I was like, I'm really getting Ryan Reynolds fatigue. Maybe it's all the commercials I'm hearing him in. Maybe that's just that bad publicity. I don't fucking know what it was, but mentally I was like, I'm tired of fucking Ryan Reynolds' stick right here. But I warmed up to it again and I enjoyed him in it. But that first action sequence, I was like, I don't like how this action's filmed. I don't like most of these characters are nobodies, all that kind of stuff like that. But then we enter in Hugh Jackman, who I really enjoyed in Logan, and I really like Hugh Jackman. He did Real Steel, which is the same director as this, and Real Steel is about the dumbest thing ever. But I really liked that movie, and it touched my dead cold heart. And Hugh Jackman was great in it. And I've become a Hugh Jackman fan over the years, and I think his Wolverine, even if the movies aren't great, he's good in them, especially Logan, when he's kind of doesn't have those chains on him. And this, he can cuss, he can shut the fuck up. You know, I just like seeing that, him yell at Deadpool, because Deadpool's very annoying, purposely done so. But this is the multiverse kind of thing here, which is good and bad because it can cover up lazy writing and bring back characters. But at the same time, it's kind of nice to see that this kind of send off to the Fox movies that I did see a lot of them as. And this is where it becomes kind of like, you know, an odd thing that for comic book fans or fans that had a bunch of the toys and stuff, where it becomes relatable. Because when you're growing up, you're like, you take a big mismatch, you're like, well, why is the Juggernaut and Apocalypse teamed up and they're fighting the X-Men and Thor? It doesn't matter. Those are the toys I have. This is the story I want to tell. These are the characters I want to use. And this kind of has that idea as well. So what we have is Deadpool kind of gets sent to this world where they no longer need certain characters, and there's all these multiverses, some we've seen, some we haven't. And that's kind of the basic plot here, but running this kind of world is characters that have been in a bunch of the other films that are dead now or have died or that never got to live. So we have like this kind of like Loki, like this villain from Loki entity that's eating everything up and kind of like a garbage disposal. We have, you know, Professor X's sister, who also has the telepathic power, Cassandra, who's crazy and dangerous and hell and weird as shit in this movie, as the kind of like the main henchman villain in this world and stuff like that. So, you know, Deadpool has to save his universe. So he goes back and he tries to use, you know, Wolverine to help him out. He needs to use Wolverine to kind of help him get out of here. I don't remember the exact little details of it, but he finds like the worst Logan who let down his entire X-Men team. But, you know, this Logan's got to redeem himself and become a hero again. So they kind of team up. They hate each other at first. They fight a lot. There's a lot of good fight scenes. They do a lot of needle drops when they fight. And at first it's very by the numbers and stuff like that, but it really won me over. I think that the fights between them are really fun. Maybe that not all the fights are great, but when we bring in all the characters that we know, the fights become fun because I'm watching these characters fight. And it's like me playing with toys again. And that's like I'm like not trying to like praise this with like fame, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to be a dick about it. I loved watching it. I couldn't believe I enjoyed it this much, and it actually just was fun and cute. It had tons of cameos in here, and I'm going to spoil the cameos because this thing's been out for a year now, 2 years maybe. But it was nice seeing Blade come back, because Blade never got a proper finish, and they're giving these guys a proper finish. It was fun to see Gambit in the movie. I never got to see a Gambit, and it was fun to see Elektra, of course, come back, and Johnny Storm, which played a nice gimmick and stuff like that. And with Deadpool, he can obviously break the fourth wall, so he's naming characters and things like that. Overall, I thought this was a lot of fun. I thought it added a lot of cool characters, a lot of cool villains that I didn't get, that I was happy to see, and a lot of great cameos, and that's part of the fun. And I think like the multiverse can obviously wear out its welcome real fucking quick, because it's one of those things where it's like, what do we do now? This is kind of a last minute zany thing, kind of like when the Spider-Man cartoon got so fucking weird when it was like, Madam Web, we're bringing all these different Spider-Mans in. You're like, what is happening? Is this just to sell toys? But I mean, these are parts of the comic line, but they're so wacky and weird. It's definitely like late phase comic book shit here. But I enjoyed Deadpool and Wolverine, and I was very shocked by it. And I just, there's a lot of gay jokes in there, and there's a really funny joke in here that I think landed really well, where you have that guy who works at that facility where he's like, I know he's looking at my ass, and there's a point where it pays off and stuff. I'm a big sucker, even if it's not a great joke, for a joke that's set up and pays off later. I always love that kind of stuff, and the guys like Simon Pegg was always great at that. Simon Pegg and Nick Frost and Edgar Wright, they always did that really well in their movies, and I always got a kick out of that stuff. But I actually surprisingly really like Deadpool and Wolverine, and I am like, again, Dave's bad movie picks. That's why I should start calling this show. I'm like, you don't want to see The Long Walk, skip The Long Walk. Take yourself down and watch Deadpool Wolverine. It's a masterpiece. I feel like an idiot. Last week, what was I like? I was like, you don't need to see Weapons, but you need to see like Ghoulies 4 or some shit like that. I didn't say that, but it's just like, it's getting to that point now. It's like, yeah, you should watch Veerana, The Vengeance of the Vampire. And no, you don't need to see The Godfather 2. What are you doing? I'm just saying, like, bad movie picks. Dave's bad movie picks or something like that. But regardless, I didn't mean that I don't like The Godfather 2. I'm just making this obviously hyperbole there. But yeah, I actually really enjoyed this, was happy with the pick, and I think it was a Jonathan Wilhelm pick, but yeah. All right, let's get these questions, comments, concerns, all that jazz. So here we go here. Amy D, great episode this week. Really interesting. Thank you. Martin Essick, Jack Jones sang the Love Boat theme song. Thank you. That's something that I wouldn't have known, to be honest. Martin VP gives me a thumbs up back at you. Neo, what is this? Neo Canolia. Yeah, he's probably going to laugh at me for that, too. But he laughs because I said American Juggalo. Did I say American Juggalo instead of American Gigolo last week? Regardless, let's see Paul Schrader direct American Juggalo. Yeah, Way Up Dude gives me a thumbs up, a bunch of little signed faces. Thank you. Beyond Sour Ground. Honestly, I don't know the whole story. So last week I missed his comment, so I told him to post it on here. Looks like he added some more as well. But Beyond Sour Ground, honestly, I don't know the whole story either. Even the guy in the video, he's talking about Lucifer Valentine video here, doesn't actually discover the true story behind Lucifer Valentine's films or the allegations, although they did dig up more evidence and connect more dots. The conclusion of the video is really revealing Lucifer Valentine's actual identity and showing his face. I'm typically not interested in hearing the details around abuse allegations in the film industry anyway, but I thought this particular case was interesting since Lucifer Valentine created such an intense cult following within the horror community back in the day and went to such great lengths to keep his identity hidden at all times. But beyond that, I'm with you, Mr. Parker. I'd rather not think about it too much. The Cat has been on my radar for years, so I can't wait to check that one out. Your review makes it sound even more bonkers than the trailer does. LOL, I am truly amazed at some of the things Asian filmmakers do with animals. Looking at you, Calamity of Snakes. Yeah, no shit. Looks like the Ellie is already sold out, so I'll get the standard edition at some point. Now that every damn release is a limited collector's item, I can't keep up anymore. I know the feeling. What are your thoughts on necromantic films, Mr. Parker? Are you a fan? I'm sure you probably reviewed them back in the day. You might even have talked about them at the point, but I don't remember. Me personally, I agree with you, Gallagher. I think those films are infamous for how revolting they are, but the actual story is paper thin. I'd much rather watch the Necrophiles or Hugh Gallagher's films if I had to choose. How about Lucker the Necrophagus? Is that Necrophagus? Is that one worth revisiting? I remember thinking it was significantly repulsive, but overall slow and boring. I can't remember anything else about it. Second, your recommendation for Hitchhike. This film is classic Italian nihilism. All right, let me get through those questions before I move on. As far as the necromantic movies, I really enjoy the necromantic movies. I actually wrote a story in college called, we don't need to talk about it. I do. I like the first one. I think it has a great sense. I love the music. I love the ending. But 2 is a great movie. I actually think 2 is a very good movie. But I do think I preferred Der Toadskin and Schramm over Necromantic 1 and 2. I don't really know, but the ending of Necromantic 1 and 2 are both such groundbreaking insanity. That scene in Necromantic 2, when she takes the blade to his neck, is just one of the most repulsive, insane scenes ever. I like the movies a lot. I enjoy them. Lucker, I have the same memory of Lucker. I remember being very thoroughly disgusted, but also incredibly bored. But that's been 10, 15, 20 years since I've seen Lucker. I'll second your recommendation for Hitchhike. The film is classic Italian nihilism. I loved Creepshow 2 when I was a kid. The old Chief Woodenhead was my favorite story back then. I've always been a sucker for revenge or vigilante films, even the predictable ones. Same. Which old Chief Woodenhead is. As I've gotten older, the Hitchhiker has really grown on me. It was a fresh way to do body horror and all. I love all the subtext of guilt and shame. You can watch a Hitchhiker as a literary story about an undying corpse, or it works as a metaphor in which Dover is just a hallucination. It's really this woman's guilt that's haunting her, literally driving her insane as her driving becomes more insane. And I love the extra little twist at the ending. The reason the husband came home uncharacteristically late was because he stopped to check on the dead hitchhiker. The Raft is also excellent for what it is, but the ending hits way too fast and could have been paced more smoothly. I'm also love to hear whose idea it was to have Stephen King show up as a trucker just to say, looks like he was a black guy, which is his only dialogue in the film. Right. I'll have to check out The Punishment. That's one I'm unfamiliar with too. I'm always intrigued by the white slavery exploitation subgenre. Films like Thriller, A Cruel Picture, Bloodsucking Freaks, Angel 3, and The Sinful Dwarf, etc. Mondo Macabro does release actual erotica though, which is just not really my thing. And based on the cover art, that's what I might have expected. I mean, it does have a lot of erotica. I would say it has a lot more erotica than horror. They don't always. Mondo releases a lot of cool shit, but I understand. I don't necessarily. It's not my number one pick as the erotica stuff. I'm always more into the horror stuff before that. But Ken Coakley, Creepshow 2 came out in '87. I do know it came out in '87. I was just wondering if it came out before or after Tales from the Crypt. Both at '87, if I'm not mistaken. As did Hellraiser, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, of course, The Hidden Angel, Heart, Evil Dead 2. I think I mentioned the Bond girl. That was the last segment in the film with Lois Childs. Yep. Or Shiles. I don't know her. I'm not too familiar. Who was in Moonraker with Roger Moore, as well as Michael Longsdale, Day of the Jackal, and Richard Keel, returning as Jaws. Anyway, back to Creepshow 2. The first segment, George Kinney, which is my favorite of the three segments, also starred film legend Dorothy Lamer as his wife. Lamore, I'm not familiar with her as well. She starred in Road to movies with Bob Hope and Bing Cosby. Not my strong point. I know it's hard to tell because of her age features, but she was wicked hot in those days. The antagonist of the story, Sam Whitemoon, was played by Holt McCallany. Yeah, he's great in it. I thought he was just some actor who came and went. Not only was this his only movie, but he has been working nonstop. He starred in my favorite biopic, The Iron Claw, as a pro wrestler, Fritz Von Erich, the patriarch of the Von Erich wrestling family. That's cool. We got to star in that. Yeah, the Claw, of course. That wrestler before my time, but I do know a little bit about that story, of course. How could you not? How could you not know anything about the Von Erichs? I haven't seen the movie yet, though. The story reminded me of the old Hank Williams song called Call Liga. The song is about a wooden Native American statue that was in front of a cigar store who, even though he was the statue, fell in love with another statue of a Native American princess. She gets sold in Call Liga, never sees her again. The song was used in the film The Last Picture Show. Love that movie. There was a bit that ran from the segment to The Raft. When David Holbrook's character TV is playing Cisco Kid, in The Raft, the two guys have a running bit of calling each other Cisco and Poncho. The Raft segment was all right. The characters weren't very likable. Mr. Superjock Banana Hammock wasn't very flattering. Not that I was looking, but it was just showing some moose knuckle, the male equivalent to camel toe. Paige Hanna, Dana's sister, was in another movie that I really liked called Shag, which is a Dirty Dancing ripoff. I didn't like Dirty Dancing, but I liked Shag. Shag was also my first exposure to Annabeth Gish. The last segment seemed more like the Twilight Zone episode. Thank goodness I watched your show all the way through. When the timestamp said Dead Silence, I thought you were reviewing James Whale film starring Donnie Wahlberg. I have seen that. I don't remember hating that movie, but yeah. As for Radical Jack, don't knock until you tried it. It was good enough for George Buck Flower, but he's been in a lot of movies, all right? It's good enough for me. I actually liked it. I also liked the song he did at Trump's inauguration. It was like John Bon Jovi's Blaze of Glory. Both songs sounded like something you would hear in the Old West. I didn't even know he was still making music, but I figured he was. I also want to give a couple RIPs. One is Robert Redford. He still kept acting even well into his 80s. I watched Rosemary's Baby last night and remembered halfway through that Redford was going to play Guy Woodhouse and Jane Fonda was going to play Rosemary, which would have been really interesting since Redford and Fonda had played a newlywed couple in Barefoot in the Park a year before. My brother met Redford at a Celtics game in the 70s. My brother said he was really cool. Seemed like a cool guy. Seemed like he lived a fantastic life, to be honest. Radical Jack. See, the thing is, Dan the cameraman picked that movie, and what Dan the cameraman likes to do is pick really oddball, weird movies like Air Bud, knowing damn well they don't fit with what I cover on here, but I watch anything, so maybe Radical Jack I'll enjoy it. I don't even know what it's about, but, Billy Ray Cyrus, I only know the fucking song, that he came out with, and I haven't really kept up with him, and I could care less. Not that I hate him, I don't know anything about the guy. I'll watch the movie, we'll find out, but I'm sure it's gonna be crummy. But, anyways, we're gonna get out of here, guys. Have a good one. There'll probably be a weird transition there. Before we go, I want to show the one movie I did get. Jeez Louise, everyone's waiting for this from Treasured Films here. And this always had trouble getting released in the States, obviously, because it's not. It got ripped off Jaws and whatnot. But this is The Last Shark, Treasured Films. Enyo G. Castellari, 1981 fun movie. Vic Morrow. Who's the other actor in here? James Franciscus, who's also cool. There's got to be somebody else in here. There's a couple Italian actors that pop up in here, too. The guy from Killer Crocodile is also in here. But this is a fun, goofy movie. Precautions were made, and I'm glad to see it on special release. Bunch of special features on here. Got the commentary by Eugenio Ercolani and Troy Howarth, of course, and a bunch of features. But this is great to finally have this on Blu-ray. I never thought there'd be an official release of The Last Shark. But yeah, good stuff. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching, and as always, have a good one.